All right, I think we are good to get started. All right, yeah, so thank you to everyone who came out tonight. I know this is, one of two town halls, but there's going to be a lot of valuable information for you going into the semester with the amount of uncertainty surrounding, a virtual process, the amount of, difference between, an in-person process and a virtual process. There's a lot that can be covered. There's a lot that's going to be different than probably what you're used to. So, this gives you an opportunity to learn, best practices both for in-person rituals and virtual rituals. So, my name's Corey Reddy. I'm the Regional Manager of Rituals and Risk Reduction for the Atlantic Gulf Coast and the Atlantic Metro region. So I saw a lot of, my MORs are on this call tonight, so I'm very happy with that. But ultimately, I'm going to be your point of contact if you guys need anything ritual related this semester. So just looking at your responsibilities as a whole for Master of Rituals. So ultimately, one of them is you serve as a member of an executive board. So you are one of many in your chapter. I understand that you have goals and ideals and things that you want to accomplish and things that you want to get out of your time in AKSI, but so does everyone else. So with an executive board, you are one person helping advance your own position and your own ideals and your own goals, but you're helping everyone else along the way. You're helping the president, vice president of membership, vice president of alumni relations, whoever else is there with you. You're going to help them in their progress as much as they're helping yours. So you're going to help decide the tone of the chapter. You're going to help decide the way the chapter operates, even if it's more than just rituals there. So outside of that, understanding the significance of fraternity history. So, specifically in the Master of Rituals role, there's a lot of power and there's a lot of understanding that comes from looking back at where we were. So those are the things that really separate us from other organizations, is where we've been, what we've done, what we've overcome, where we are now, and the fact that through things like rituals, you make vows and commitments, and this isn't something you can just come and go as you please. This isn't just I'm going to show up on Tuesday and maybe I'll show up again next month. This is something you enter into, and this is a commitment. So understanding the significance of the fraternity history as well as your chapter history as well. So my chapter is closing in 100 years old, but I work with chapters that are 5 years old. So if you're an older chapter like mine, then you have decades of brothers to look back on. You have decades of people to reference. You have decades of journals and diaries of AKSI that you can look back on and reflect upon when planning your future. But if you are a chapter that was founded in 2017, you're your own history right now. You're going to be the one that brothers look back on in the future and think, what did so-and-so do to help make our chapter great? Just because they don't have anything to stack it up against. So, it doesn't matter how long you've been in AKSI, all chapters are created equal. And, it doesn't matter who's come before you, because you're eventually going to be someone that everyone looks back to if you do this job properly. And then oversee and execute rituals. So that's pretty straightforward. You are the master of rituals. It's your job to, plan, execute, advise, evaluate everything going on from a rituals perspective. So in a situation like this, because it's not, something like a vice president of finance position where it's kind of fluid throughout the entire thing, what's coming up, the peaks and valleys that you're going to face with this position. So, that's a blessing and a curse in a sense, where, the blessing being, when you're going to be really busy, but those times are going to be, incredibly busy. So we are going to talk about ways to execute those rituals in a way where you can divide your time up and delegate to those who you can trust. But on top of that, when you do execute a ritual, you're the one setting the tone for the chapter. So, you create the dynamic that pledges give a presentation in. You create the atmosphere that pledges are initiated in. And I don't know how many of you have thought about this, kind of in depth, especially if this is your first semester on e-board and you're, going into it for the first time. But take it back to pledging for a little bit. Think of all of the brothers that you looked up to and you respected and you wanted to emulate when you became a brother. This might have been the president. This might have been the vice president of membership. This might have been your big. Ultimately, there was someone in this chapter that you use to help guide your performance and help guide the way you felt towards the Brotherhood. Now that you're in a position of leadership, especially one as forward as the Master of Rituals, there's a very high possibility that you will be that brother for either someone in the chapter right now or someone in your future pledge class. So it's up to you to kind of live up to those expectations, and you may not feel any different, but think of the pressure that you inadvertently put on brothers that came before you. Someone's going to put that on you, and it's going to be up to you to roll with it and make sure that everyone gets the most out of their time in these rituals and they feel that this is something of value. And then finally, maintain the inventory ritual equipment. So we'll go into that on a later slide, but essentially everything that would be involved in an in-person ritual, you should be the one hosting it. You should be the one, holding, ritual books, robes, candles, flashlights, etc. And we'll get into that down the line, but essentially everything that comes with running a ritual should be housed with you. So we're going to talk about utilizing Zoom for a little bit. So starting off with security, these are just some tips that you can use to help make sure your rituals run smoother and that you don't have any outside distractions coming in and messing it up for you. So the first would be enabling waiting room. So think of things like Court of Honor, where you have a group presentation ready to go and they're in the waiting room. Instead of coming in potentially as one group is wrapping up, you as the host can keep them in a waiting room and wait until it's time for them to enter, until the Brotherhood is ready, until the last group is left. So in a situation like that, by enabling a waiting room, you create a level of order and balance for your rituals. So outside of that, set a meeting password. This is pretty straightforward. It should be a locked room, and it should be a room that only the brothers and the pledges have access to. You don't want anyone not affiliated with AKSI coming in there and potentially messing things up for you. So just setting a password is going to make that a lot easier. And then finally, managing participants. So as the host, you have the right to remove whoever needs to be removed, if they are causing a problem for you. So if they're in a regular ritual environment, an in-person ritual environment, if someone is unruly or if someone is acting out during a time of reverence, you have the right to remove them. So realistically, there are going to be other types of problems that can exist in a virtual ritual. So it could be someone doesn't mute themselves and is continuing to have a conversation in the background. It could be someone is on camera doing something that they shouldn't be doing. So you have the right to maintain the order of your ritual room that you would at an in-person ritual. So those are security measures. Those are things you can just kind of do to make sure that everything is done properly. So then scheduling. So this could be both for in-person and virtual, but we'll go down the list, and I think this is predominantly going to be focused on virtual rituals. So communicate changes to ritual dates with your regional management team and CERC. So if your areas 3 or 4, you have Coral. If you have areas 1 or 2, you have Amber as your CERC. Your RMT, so that would be your chapter advisor, section director, regional director. If you have an RM that covers this, then they would fall under that. So just communicate any issues that you're having or any potential ritual date changes that you're coming up with. So going back to in-person rituals, one of the things why it's important to communicate these changes, specifically with induction and initiation, is you are required to report your initiates and your pledges within a certain amount of time. So within 1 week of the scheduled date, those numbers are expected to be uploaded to ChapterSpot. They're expected to be communicated with to AKSI staff. If you change a date and then you don't tell them, that time frame does not change. So if your ritual is going to be hosted on Friday, Friday the 13th, your numbers are due to your CERC by the 20th. So if you change it to the 19th, let's say, you don't get until the 26th anymore because you didn't communicate that out. You would get until the 20th. And in the past, this has resulted in chapters being fined for things that are very much in their control. So In a virtual environment, there's been a little bit more flexibility, especially last semester. But now that we have a general understanding of what things look like and what they're going to be moving forward, please just communicate those things out to out to the RMT and out to your CERC so we can help you with these things. Consider time zones of participants. So obviously, if everyone's in person, this is a lot easier, but in a virtual environment, people might be from all around the world at your chapter, especially if you are an international chapter. So going back to, basic risk management, a pledge event can only occur between 8 a.m. and 11 p.m. And it's taking into consideration where that person is, that 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. your time is going to be different than their time. So if you live in, Tampa, and you're on East Coast time, and you have a student that's in China who's 12 hours ahead of you, a noon ritual for you is a midnight ritual for them. So that doesn't work for their time zone, even if it works for you. So consider the time zones of who's going to be participating in this. If you do have to, this goes into the next point, so you can hold multiple rituals to work with different time zones. I've had chapters in both of my regions who required, specific times, needed for individual groups for things like Court of Honor. They needed one group had to go at 9 in the morning and the rest could go on East Coast time. So take that into consideration when you are planning your rituals, when you are, sorting things out. Obviously, it's not ideal compared to an in-person environment, but this is something that everyone's going to have to deal with as a result of being virtual. Even something like a 3-hour time zone difference, if you're on the East Coast versus the West Coast, that eliminates specific areas of time for both of you. So now think about that from a planning perspective and try to figure things out before the ritual launches and before things get out of control. And then engagement features. So just going to run through these: chat, file transfer, screen share, polling, and breakout rooms. So these are all things that you can use to help organize the chapter, both from a brotherhood perspective and from a pledge perspective. So things like screen share are going to make it easier for you to screen share is going to make it easier for you to do things like Court of Honor, where they have a presentation, they're going to walk through it. Polling is going to be make it easier for things like voting if you have your chapter present. Breakout rooms will keep things organized if you need multiple rooms going and you're following the Bridge to Brotherhood Facilitator Guide. So all of these things can be done these are all features that can be used to help your chapter get through these rituals as seamlessly as possible. So we're going to go into virtual rituals more. So everything on the left-hand side is realistically something that can, and for the most part, should be done this semester. So pledge induction and pledge initiation. So, all of you have been through these in person and or virtually so far. So, pledge induction, the first thing they do, as they become pledges, essentially an invitation to pledge at your chapter. And, induction is the ritual that makes it official. Initiation, the last thing they do is pledges. So this is the transition from pledge to brotherhood. It's the capstone of a semester that they've done, where they've worked hard, where they've overcome, and where they've learned. And, it's capped off with a celebration of them officially becoming brothers. So, please note the difference between induction and initiation for member reporting. So once again, like taking that 7-day deadline into account, please communicate with your RMT and your CERC to make sure that you're reporting properly and that everything is done in a timely manner. Initiation of faculty and honorary members. So, looking at these realistically may be harder to come by in a virtual environment, but they are still possible. There are scripts available for them. So, looking at what you would do in person. So let's say there's someone on campus that has had a profound and positive impact on your chapter, or there's someone in your community that has had a great impact and has enhanced the lives of your brothers. There's an opportunity to make them a part of Alpha Kappa Psi without them having to go through the same process that all of us went through. It's just a matter of, they show up, the script is read, and they are an honorary or a faculty member of Alpha Kappa Psi. These are still things you can do virtually. I know, it might be tougher. It's not, quite as close-knit as an in-person environment, but it's something that will ultimately, it'll make a positive impact for you on your campus when things do go back to normal It'll help your relationship with your school, potentially. It'll help your relationship with your community. So think about it from that lens when you're planning these things out. And then the last two, installation of officers and graduation ceremony. So installation of officers is very straightforward. It's hopefully something that all of you went through before you became Master of Rituals. I hope your chapters didn't just pass you some documents and say good luck to you. I hope they went through the actual transition of the old executive board moving on and the new executive board coming in. So there's a script for that available. And then the graduation ceremony. So the final thing you do as a student brother in Alpha Kappa Psi, it's the transition from student brother to alumni brother after all your outstanding dues and fees have been paid, after all your minimum standards have been met, after all those things have been done. It's one final capstone to celebrate your time as a student in AK Psi. This is something that can be done virtually. Ultimately, I know there's a preference for that in-person environment, but at that same time, this is still a great way to celebrate your graduating seniors, even if it is from a distance environment. Outside of that, I know some of you might notice you don't see Court of Honor or midterm interview on here. So both those rituals are included in the Bridge to Brotherhood Facilitator Guide, which we'll get to in a later slide. But so all that script is there. That script and those question banks, the presentation guidelines, none of that has changed, and it can be done virtually just the same. So other rituals on the right-hand side here, these realistically are not going to be ones that you deal with. College chapter installation, presentation in lieu of charter, college chapter colonization, and installation of an alumni chapter. So these are things that still can be worked on. They happen far less frequently than, say, a pledge induction or initiation, but they are rituals that do happen. They're usually done by members of the fraternity ritual team, and they serve a different purpose than kind of the ones you do at a student chapter. So some key reminders, utilize your ritual team. So depending on the size of your chapter or depending on how your chapter operates, I hope most, if not all of you, have some sort of ritual team present, so an assistant master of ritual, something like that, where you can delegate and help with the planning and practice of these rituals. If it's you just running around, like specifically with an in-person ritual, if it's you just running around and trying to pick up everything and do everything on your own, ultimately that's a lot of work to put one person through. So please lean on a team if you have one. If you don't, then either find a way to create one, or if your chapter is not large enough for it, lean on the rest of your executive board. They're here to help you just as much as you're here to help them, and it's going to make your life a lot easier when those things get done. Practice run of rituals. So, looking at things like induction and initiation, for example, don't be the chapter that is handing out reading pieces or, as rituals are about to start. Don't be the MOR who goes down the line and says, hey, do you want to be the merchant? Those are parts you should have assigned and ready to go ahead of time. You can give them their reading parts ahead of time so they have an opportunity to read what they're going to say ahead of time. You don't want to be the chapter that just reads straight off the book and makes it look like they're looking at this material for the first time. It's very easy for someone to tell, even if you've never seen it before. So practice them, even for things like Court of Honor and midterm interview. You know who you can trust to ask questions. You know who you can trust to evaluate. You know who's more seasoned and who can help run a panel, for example. So that's going to be up to you to get those things done ahead of time. You can do panel training. You can assign parts ahead of time. There's a lot of flexibility with this position to get everything prepared in advance to the point where you can show up. We'll show up in an in-person ritual. You could show up and have very little to do fundamentally if everyone knows their role and how to do it. Book rooms early. So, I went to a large, institution myself. I don't know how many of you, go to an SEC or a Big 10 or a Big 12 university, but, if you're at a large college campus, you're going to have competition with other organizations just to get the absolute bare minimum. Booking rooms is included in that environment. The administration does not care where Alpha Kappa Psi has a ritual. So if you want a better room that can hold your chapter, get it early, work with the work with the school in advance and try to get these things done. So you're not scrambling for rooms the day of. Even if you do have a little bit more flexibility on your campus, even if you do have the opportunity where you don't really have to register rooms per se, or you don't have that much competition, it's always good to have something in writing so that in the event that something happens and something gets canceled on you and you have proof, or something gets damaged and you have proof you weren't there. It's just a matter of covering your bases and making sure that everything is done properly on your end. Moving on to removing members, collegiate or alumni, if they disrupt or disrespect a ritual, specifically with alumni, just because in a sense they have less to lose. If an alumni does something, to your chapter, ultimately, there are often times where the chapter ends up facing more of a consequence than the alumni does. Just because they're not there every single day, they're not impacted by this in their real life. Your chapter is the one who is. So, if alumni come in and they don't like this, the Bridge to Brotherhood facilitator guy, and they want to tell you, no, this is how we used to do things, advocate to them why these changes have been made. If you don't know why these changes are being made, just stick to what you've been taught by your RMT. Stick to what you've been taught by those who are trained to do it. If your alumni are still upset, please refer them to your RMT or your CERC. We are here to protect you. We're not here to, get you in a worse off situation. We'll deal with any alumni that don't like the changes that have come with either a virtual process or the Bridge to Brotherhood process. We'll take care of you. You do not worry about that. So lunch break for longer events. So looking at things like an in-person court of honor. So there are a lot of chapters that do court of honor and initiation at the same day. So a great opportunity there would be court of honor in the morning, have a light lunch in the middle, and then move forward with initiation, and then you can have the rest of the time to do as you please. So just spacing that out, kind of understanding where each one is, and understanding why they are the way they are. That ultimately, when you do court of honor initiation, it's going to be a very long day for everyone involved, and a little bit of space in the middle to just breathe, drink water, get something to eat is going to make things easier for you. Communicate dress code and general expectations with pledges, collegiate brothers, and alumni. So very straightforward. Most, if not all, rituals that you attend are going to have a business professional dress code. In the virtual environment, unless there's an extreme circumstance preventing that, the dress code should remain the same. So taking it back to last semester for a moment, if you were at the University of Florida and you left your suit as a pledge, you left it in Gainesville, and you drive back down to Tampa, and there's nothing you can really do to go back there until it's time to clean out your apartment, an exception can be made for you because that's a hardship in extreme circumstance. But if that's not the case and everyone's got what they need, then both the brothers and the pledge class are expected to maintain the dress code that has been outlined in the rituals already. And then finally, pledge fees should be collected before induction, and initiation fees should be collected before initiation. So I know this is easier said than done. Ultimately, $48 or $84 are not exactly pocket change for everyone, and especially with induction, it's very hard to kind of communicate it from the congrats, we're going to accept you, now give us your money. I know how it comes across, but it's more so for covering your own bases, just because that money is due, at a certain amount of point. You don't want to be the chapter scrambling to get it. Things can be worked out. You can put pledges on payment plans. There are opportunities. Just communicate that upwards. But it's significantly easier for you as a chapter just to have all of that ahead of time, induct them or initiate them, and then as you report them, send the money in. It's just going to be a nice fluid motion for all of you to go through. I understand if it's not possible. This is more so just best practice for all of you. So moving on to the ritual trunk checklist. So let's look down at the materials. So all of you should have the most if not all of this. This is the checklist that every chapter should have. I know the ritual books, looking at this slide here, the 10 ritual books came to every single chapter last fall. They're brand new. They shouldn't be written in or highlighted or whatever. You should put your sticker in there, but they should be in good condition still. They should be in a good spot. So I'm not worried about that for any of the schools just because you just got them. So you should be fine there. But everything else, just starting at top and working our way down. Recognition buttons. So these are the buttons given out to you at initiation, where you turn in a pledge pin, and then you get the recognition button in return. Regarding pledge pins, you just recycle those every semester. So assuming you don't lose them or you don't take a significantly larger pledge class, the pledge pin should be able to rotate every single semester at no cost to the chapter. Recognition buttons, so you should have a pile of them already, just because when you do report your initiates, they are your chapter is sent the amount of recognition buttons that correlate to how many initiates you reported. So if you gave out 20, if you took a pledge class of 20, you gave out 20 recognition buttons. When you report your 20 initiates, you get 20 buttons back. So that upcoming semester, you don't have to buy more. You don't have to cover yourself in that area. And then just going down, we covered ritual books, flashlights, plates, master scroll, AKSI gavel, 6x6 altar cloth with crest. So these are just materials. They're more so going to be for things like induction and initiation, but they do serve a purpose. They do have value, and they should be a part of the trunk that you carry around. The rest, we're going to go through the robes real quick: president, MOR, executive, merchant, banker, accountant, warden, front guard, rear guard, and guide. So you should have 10 robes in your you should have 10 robes in your trunk. Please get them dry cleaned as you transition from semester to semester. Please make sure they're in good condition. If not, replace them with what's on the AKSI website. Moving down to jewel badge reproduction, coat of arms reproduction, file box, ritual trunk, and certificate in blue charter. So take an opportunity to just look over these at some point. Look at what you have, what you're missing, and what you need to have a complete set. So every single one of these items is on the AKSI store. You can buy them individually, or you can buy them as a bundle. Realistically, the majority of you do not need to buy every single thing either. I'm going to go out on a limb and say the majority of you have most of the items presented here. If you need every single item on here, it's presented in a bundle for like $1,600, $1,690, $1,695, something like that. But ultimately, maybe most of you are missing, one robe and a coat of arms reproduction or something, some combination to that extent. You can buy those pieces individually and then have those, mailed to you so that you have a complete set and you can move it. You can have everything good to go moving forward. So MR resources. Let's skip the facilitator guide for a moment and just focus on these bottom four here. So these are all video playlists that are available on the AKSI YouTube channel. So most, if at least these top three here, were presented by Mike Dickerson, who's former fraternity president. Very knowledgeable about how rituals work, very knowledgeable about the history of Alpha Kappa Psi and its relation to rituals. So we're not going to go through these now just because they are, lengthy compared to the 40 minutes that, we've been given for this presentation. But, these are great resources to look over if you, have some time in the future and you want to learn more about how to do your position well. Some of these are in-person specific, which may not be super useful right now, but if you can learn to adapt these policies going into the spring or going into fall 2021, whenever we do get back to an in-person ritual, your chapter is going to be better prepared for it than a chapter that hasn't watched these or hasn't focused on that time. And then officer development YouTube playlist is just going to be all the officers, just because MOR is important, but once again it is one of many. So there's videos for presidents, VPARs, VP MEMS, the majority of the officers in your chapter will have a development playlist out there. So let's go to the Bridge to Brotherhood Facilitator Guide for a moment. So let's click on this. So I'm already logged into my AKSI. Okay, so you'll log into my AKSI, and it's going to be this file right here. And there's the facilitator guide. So this is the updated version for the fall. If you're in one of my regions, I've sent this over to you already, so you don't have to worry about it. But ultimately, if you don't have access to this, there's a specific section of pages in here that, for midterm interview and court of honor, I can't emphasize the importance of them enough. So let's go down to page 76. Rituals. So this should be something you're all pretty familiar with. So the entire script for midterm interview and court of honor is listed between page 76 and 90. It's very straightforward. It's very open to just understanding what you need to do and helping you get through everything you're looking to get to. Forming the interview team, so just helping you assemble a panel members, presenter of pledges. We'll go through this quickly, but just kind of what they should be, what you're looking for, how this is going to make your lives easier, warnings and guides. So getting into midterm interview objectives, what there's going to be, the skills touched on, materials needed, and preparation, which is going to be big for you. Midterm interview procedure. So this is just going to go down and help you with preparation, let them know ahead of time, before and after room. Obviously, with the virtual ritual, it's going to be a little bit different. Professional attire, early start, once again, between 8 and 11 p.m. 8 a.m. and 11 p.m., excuse me. Midterm interview can be done. Yes, you got multiple rooms. We're going to get down to that in a little bit, and that's just for timing's sake. Interview should last, 5 to 15 minutes. So we'll get into that in this area here. So this is the chart you should be using to conduct your midterm interview process. So you look at this left-hand column, number of pledges. So this is your pledge class size. This is the amount of rooms you should be doing. This is the number of pledges per panel, maximum length of each panel, and the maximum total length of the ritual itself. So these two max columns are hard stops. So you can't, if you have a pledge class of 9, it doesn't mean you can have a 15-minute presentation. It means, or a 15-minute interview. You're going to stop at 10. So the only thing that's flexible is the number of interview rooms and the number of pledges per panel, and that is just a matter of, does your school accommodate for what we're asking? If you're a chapter down here that has a pledge class of 40 plus, it might be tough for you to book 5 interview rooms. So that's the mentality of, it's flexible in these two areas specifically, but these max lengths are hard stops for the chapter. Yeah, this is just, should delay occur, please don't use blindfolds. I feel like it's pretty straightforward, but you got to remind people sometimes. Yeah, invite people when you can. Obviously a virtual ritual is not quite as engaging as an in-person ritual, but it gives you the opportunity to, help your alumni give back. And, just working on the setup and the interview process. So this is going to be just the script, how to introduce them, how to address them, how to bring them in, how to exit them. This is the actual script itself. So POP, panel chair, guide, just blowing through that. And that's the end of the ritual. So after voting is done, we close out. And then we're going to go to court of honor real quick. So just looking at what's needed for this. Once again, very similar in terms of the basics behind it. The fundamental ritual is obviously different, but the structure behind you as a master of rituals is very similar to what would be done for every other ritual. Court of honor procedure. So this is preparation, just having before and after rooms, early start, multiple rooms. So now we're going to go back down to, different guidelines, different expectations here, just because this is a group presentation. Ultimately, let me go back up here for a second. So these max total lengths carry over to court of honor. So obviously, this is going to be a little bit different because there's a presentation involved. But if you had 2.5 hours for your midterm interview, you get 2.5 hours for your court of honor. So, you get 15 minutes to present, followed by 15 minutes of Q&A. So looking at that from there, like, you don't have to use the full time of both. You can use multiple rooms as a compensation, but think about that from a setup perspective, where how many groups are you going to have? They should be no more than 5 and no fewer than 3 to a group. And depending on your pledge class, that'll help you kind of even these groups out and determine how many rooms you're going to need. Scroll down here, just a repeat of all that setup, presentation process. And there's more information about the actual presentation in the membership module. So this is where you would work closely with your vice president of membership to make sure that they know what they're presenting on, they know the topics, they know what it's supposed to look like, and they know what they can use to help articulate that. So that's where working as an e-board is going to be very helpful for you. Presentation process. So once again, very similar, how to address them, how to ask them questions, and then court of honor script. Just the introduction, bringing them in. You have time, address their questions, go down to voting, and then that's a wrap. So ritual question bank. So these are the only approved questions that you can ask at a midterm interview or a court of honor. So just go down this list and find out how to direct each one to the pledge themselves. And the great thing about having a list like this is it gives you an opportunity to know in advance who's coming in, what time are they coming in, what are their strengths and what are their weaknesses, and how can we showcase those in an environment like court of honor or midterm interview. So if let's pick one. So if they haven't necessarily displayed servant leadership during the pledging process, maybe it's time to ask them, why do you think it's important to act as a servant leader, and give them the opportunity to speak up and acknowledge, maybe why they're not showing it as much as they could be. It'll shine lights onto the areas that are strong with the pledge class, and it'll shine a light onto the areas where they still need to improve. But ultimately, this list is great just to help organize your rituals and help this is like everything here is acceptable. Everything here is going to be fine. And then, anything outside of this, is not approved. So, take that into consideration when you are, creating your ritual environment. So, that's it. Okay. So we're all done here. I saw the group chat, so I'm sure there were questions.
Yeah, Corey, so I think I answered some of the questions up to the 2 recent ones. So the first question that Jeremy had asked was, will this be available after in a recording? The answer to that, just for the whole group, is yes. In a couple days, we try to have it up on the AKSI YouTube channel, so you guys will be able to see the recording after this, as well as the recording from the July 15th. Townhall is also there, so if you want to view that also, as well as I listed the regions per area so that you can sort of tell which area you're in, and then that will help you find your CERC that I also put in the chat. So our first question we have is from Ellie. Are we required to have court of honor and midterm interviews in person? If not virtual, how should we maintain social distance?
So as of right now, virtual is highly recommended. First and foremost, you are a guest at your university. If your university is not allowing in-person meetings, then you've got to roll with the punches and have a virtual ritual. And then even if you are allowed to have an in-person ritual, we're strongly advising moving towards a ritual format, just for the safety and security of the chapter as a whole. It's going to be best for right now that everyone kind of shifts towards this virtual process.
Great. Awesome. Is there a virtual script for rituals, or should we tweak them ourselves? And this one's from Diego.
So depends on which which rituals you're looking for in particular. So midterm interview and court of honor are in the Bridge to Brotherhood facilitator guide, so nothing there should be changed. It's very straightforward. Induction and initiation do have scripts that have changed for virtual process. I have the initiation script. I don't have the induction one offhand, but for initiation, the fraternity secrets were removed just because a virtual process is not as secure as an in-person one. So the scripts themselves are available, should we get to that point in the semester where you need them. I know for AM and AGC schools, I will send those to you. I've sent, for AGC, I sent you the initiation script if you haven't initiated the previous pledge class. I will send all of you induction scripts when I get them. And then what else is there? Transition of officers and graduation ceremony, I believe graduation ceremony, I know there's a virtual script available for you. The transition of officers, I'm guessing there is, but at the same time, I don't know what I know the one I did with the chapter was from the ritual book, just because it is, pretty straightforward, and it is an open ritual. So in that case, I'm not 100% sure for that specific ritual, but basically every other one, has a script of some capacity there.
Yeah, and I'll add on top of what Corey said, just with the other rituals other than induction, initiation, most of the ones that you find that you'd be doing in the ritual manual, if you're going to tweak it or if you need to do that virtually, it's really just removing the movement out of it, if that's like a handshake or something. But most of the words and the roles in it can be done in a virtual setting.
Yep.
Yeah. So Ellie asked, how should we get pins to new members and pledges during virtual recruitment? That's a great question. I'll be honest. I'll be honest. I hadn't thought about the induction for pledges and getting them pledge pins. I would say, honestly, if you're doing a virtual pledge process, they probably won't have pledge pins during that if you're trying to maintain social distance. I will say we are working on solutions for getting initiation materials out. I know that we postponed the initiation materials for the spring just because there was chapters weren't in session in person to receive the boxes of initiation materials. So we wanted to make sure everybody got them. We thought the fall would be better. Obviously, best laid plans. So we are working on some solutions right now for both individually getting people initiation materials who initiated in the spring, as well as what we can do for the fall. I'll be honest, it might turn into a waiting till we're on campus just due to trying to get things to everybody. We're looking at virtual options of getting different some of the materials to people virtually. So it's really trying to be as cost effective as we can at this point, and trying to get everybody their what they paid for with their initiation fees. So we are still working on solutions, and we'll keep you updated. If you have more questions on that, I think we'll try to keep everybody updated as we go. I will say we're trying to do our best to get pins to people first, because we know that's a sentimental thing, as well as certificates. That's sort of where our focus is for both of those, and the other items we'll try to get out as soon as we can, but we know certificates and pins are probably what means the most to people. I was a brother too, so that's sort of where I was going with it. If you, we are still working on that solution is the short answer, and we're trying to do our best to make sure everybody gets what they paid for, and that we can do it in the most cost-effective way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see one more question. So for initiation of new members, are we required to wear robes / set up tables if it is a virtual initiation? So specifically with setting up tables, like a lot of the things you would need a table for, those portions have been edited and or removed. So in that case, you wouldn't need it just because, you're not giving things out, you're not taking things in. I'm trying to be as vague as possible because they are secrets and this is going on YouTube. But so, you know what's required of you regarding the table itself. So in that case, it's not, as valuable here. For robes, I'm leaning towards no as well. I don't have a 100% concrete answer here, but I'm leaning towards no just because a virtual environment is not as secure as an in-person environment. So you shouldn't be wearing the robes outside of the ritual room. And theoretically, in a virtual environment, anyone can pop in if it's compromised. Whereas if you're an in-person environment, you have someone kind of making sure that everything is secure. So I'm leaning towards no, but I'd like to hear Alex's opinion on this one because I don't have a 100% confirmation on it.
So I pulled up one of our FAQ documents from the website just to see if we had some more answers for this one. So we do. So the version that Corey was talking about for initiation, I'll just give you sort of the highlights over what sort of happened with it and what changes were made. So basically we created it into a public version of the initiation ritual, sorry. So we removed the handshake, the password, and the motto because those are the secret parts of AK Psi, and then reduce the number of people involved in the ritual. So usually you have 10 people involved. We reduced it down to 3 just to make it easier for a virtual environment, and removed, again, any processional or movement, because obviously that would be difficult to do or would make everybody a little bit seasick if everybody's getting up and moving around during it. And then there's no ritual gear or robes needed. Like Corey had mentioned, it's just it was made into a public version of the ritual. So just like you wouldn't take pictures in your robes, you shouldn't be on video in the robes.
You guys are bringing the heat tonight. I don't think I had any questions last time. All right. I don't see anything else.
Does anybody just want to speak up and say theirs, and you don't have to type it in? We just want to make sure we answer your questions right now. If you don't have them, totally fine. And we're happy to answer them after this too. So, okay.
All right, pretty straightforward. All right. Yeah. So, thank you to everyone who came out. Thank you to everyone who took the time to try to learn things that can help you in your position for this upcoming semester. I know this is going to be different. It's not going to be quite as intense or quite as quite as personal as the in-person environment was. But ultimately, you guys got to make the most of what's been given in this situation. And by taking a step here and trying to learn about how to be a better chapter, how to be a better master of rituals, you've shown that you've made this a priority. You've shown that this is something that matters to you, and it's going to be something you can take back to your chapter and help make everyone better and help make their experience better for this upcoming semester. So thanks to everyone who came out. Thanks to all the AGC and AM schools for coming out, because you make me very happy when that happens. But yeah, outside of that, have a good night. Even if you're not one of my students, so you can reach out to me at any time. I'll help you where I can. Alec will help you where they can, and everyone else in AK Psi is going to help you wherever is possible. Your CA will, your SD will, your RD will. Everyone is here to help you traverse this rough period.
Great.
Right.
So thank you guys again. I think we'll let everybody go. We thank you for all the questions. Again, let us know if you need anything. And I did put the CERC's emails in the chat. It's really just our first names and then @akpsi.org. So if you have any questions, my name's Alec. I'm the Associate Director of Student Services. So if you forget who your CERC is, just alec@akpsi.org and I can get them to you. So